Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I'm going to give it just another minute or two, well, no more than one because it's already 1:01 Central Time, and let a couple more people. It looks like we have quite a few people joining as we speak, so I'm going to give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll dive into the presentation today. All right, we're 2 minutes after the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Bradley Martin. If you've joined any of our webinars before, you may have heard my voice. I lead the sales and marketing here at Kindful, and I'm excited today. We're going to be hosting, I'm going to step aside a little bit. We're going to be hosting Elizabeth and Travis from Classy, and they're going to be presenting some fresh data on their this year's State of Modern Philanthropy, and specifically around deconstructing the online donor journey. And so before I hand that off to them, I did want to give just a couple of quick housekeeping notes so that you guys can know what the plans are for today. So number one is we will be sending out this recording, and Travis and Elizabeth will be mentioning quite a few resources throughout their presentation today. And in the follow-up email, we'll be providing links to the majority of those resources. So don't feel like you need to take feverish notes. Don't feel like you need to jot down links. We will make sure we get those sent to you either later today or first thing tomorrow. In addition, we will have time at the end of the presentation for a few questions. And so if you look at your go-to webinar control panel and scroll down a little bit, you'll see a questions tab. Please just feel free to go ahead throughout the presentation, enter your questions there, and then I'll be monitoring those and trying to kind of find themes and things that we can ask of Travis and Elizabeth at the end of the presentation. So if you have questions, just go ahead and pop them in. You don't have to wait to the end to go ahead and put those into the GoToWebinar control panel. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and let Travis and Elizabeth take over. Thanks for coming, guys.
Sorry, I just had to take myself off mute. Thanks so much, Bradley, and the Kindful team. We're so excited to be here with everyone today. If we just scroll over to the next slide, you can catch a little glimpse of myself and Travis as I introduce ourselves a little further. Travis is the lead growth analyst at Classy, and he actually mined the insights and the data trends and findings from which we created this year's State of Modern Philanthropy, which is our third annual report. And again, I'm Elizabeth, or Liz Pun, managing editor at Classy, and I also helped to oversee the content creation and the storyline of this year's report. So it's really great to be here with you all and talk a little bit about it. So again, we're excited to be here to give you all a sneak peek at our third annual State of Modern Philanthropy 2020 report. It's now out and available, and our hope is that you will all walk away with tangible insights and actionable takeaways. And so for our agenda for today, we'll first explain a bit about why we created this report, and then we'll dive into a snapshot from each main section of the report. So why did we create this report for the third year in a row? Well, here at Classy, we have over 4,000 nonprofit partners that we serve, ranging in size from small to large. They're raising anywhere from tens of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars on the Classy platform. So what that means is that we are sitting on a gold mine of giving data that we can evaluate in order to share insights and trends with our nonprofit community, both customers and non-customers, especially as online giving continues to grow and become a key piece to any nonprofit fundraising strategy. So it's definitely top of mind for Classy to continue to create reports like this and properly surface the data and insights with all of you so that you can tweak and inform your fundraising strategies accordingly. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Travis to dive into a little bit more information about this year's report itself.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. So the State of Modern Philanthropy 2020, which we subtitled Deconstructing the Online Donor Journey, reveals fresh insights around online donor behavior, which we've distilled after reviewing millions of transactions on our platform. As Liz mentioned, our hope is to provide these trends so that you can continue to hone your fundraising strategies and nurture and grow your donor base. Some of our previous reports provided some great benchmark stats on and that we wanted to update and continue to grow on. However, we also dive into some new information around referral sources, donor demographics, and just some new findings around online donor activity. And then in the second half of the report, we really get into the latest figures around recurring donor behavior and donor retention, which is something that we first explored in last year's report. This year, we got even a little more granular, and we started looking at factors like cause category and gift size and explored how those impact recurring giving and retention. So just a little bit of context on the data. This data is all coming from the Classy platform and represents data from about October 1st, 2018 through September of 2019. And so this includes over 40,000 unique campaigns from 4,500 organizations. And as Liz mentioned, they really vary in size, raising anywhere from thousands of dollars to millions of dollars annually on our platform. And as such, our data set is looking at about 6.4 million donations, and just under 3 million of those were recurring gifts. There are certain sections of the report where we look at other timeframes in order to examine certain trends. So for instance, we look back at October 2017 through September 2018 in order to investigate second actions that people take over a year. And then we also looked at the last 2 months of 2019, so that way we can examine the holiday behavior.
So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the report, we wanted to quickly review a few key terms that will better help you understand and apply the findings. And these are really provided at the beginning of each of our State of Modern Philanthropy reports so that we're all on the same page about how we refer to these terms throughout the report. So these terms are specific actions that supporters can take on the Classy platform. And these are first, donating. And this means to contribute to an organization with a one-time or recurring donation. A supporter can fundraise, which is when they raise money on behalf of an organization, knowing that, of course, fundraising efforts can yield more awareness, engagement, and money than the supporter could likely provide on their own or from their own wallets. And a supporter can also purchase tickets on the platform, which means to register for live events or events in general, contributing to a cause through active participation. These are also the various campaign types on Classy through which supporters can take those actions that we just discussed. So these campaign types that we'll be referring to throughout the report include a donation page, and this is the checkout form that processes a supporter's donation. Here we know that shorter checkout forms generally lead to higher conversion rates, and the primary call to action here is to complete a one-time or recurring donation. We also have peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns, and this is a campaign that features a landing page that ultimately drives supporters to create personal fundraising pages, or they can also just make a donation to the campaign. The primary call to action here, though, is to fundraise on behalf of the organization. We also have crowdfunding campaigns, and this campaign contains a landing page with opportunities for more storytelling and impact transparency that really draw the visitors in and tell them where each of their donations will be going, followed by a checkout form. And the primary call to action on a crowdfunding campaign is to complete a one-time or recurring donation. And on Classy, we also have a suite of event campaigns where the primary call to action is to register for an event and purchase a ticket, or to register and create a personal fundraising page to also fundraise on behalf of the organization. So we have ticketed event campaigns or registration with fundraising campaigns. Each campaign contains a landing page with, again, opportunities for that storytelling and impact transparency, followed by a checkout form allowing ticket purchases and or donations. The primary call to action can be to either purchase a ticket or to fundraise, depending on which campaign type you're going with. So as we've mentioned, this presentation is a sneak peek of the report. Hopefully you'll get a taste of what's to come and be able to digest the entire report at your leisure, which has many more findings than we'll share here today. But for the purposes of this presentation, we've structured this similarly to the report itself. So we'll dive into a key data snapshot from each main section, highlighting just one or two of the most interesting data points available in that section, along with some supporting data, and then some thought starters for how you might consider applying these insights to your strategy. So to start, let's look at section 1, which is all about giving gateways and donor demographics. So in this section, one of our key insights related to donor info and demographics and gateways is that 60% of traffic on Classy is from a mobile device. That means the majority of traffic consists of people on the go, on their iPhones and tablets, coming to your campaigns through their mobile devices. And of that mobile traffic, 50% comes from social media. So let's dive into that just a little bit further. We see that, again, of mobile traffic, 50% comes from social media. This is compared to the fact that only 19% of desktop traffic comes from social media. This only emphasizes the fact that many people on their smart devices are often landing on campaign pages through their activity on social media.
Yeah, so I want to jump in here. Just knowing how important social media is, especially these days, we wanted to take a deeper look at just how different campaign types on our platform compare when it comes to attracting traffic from social media. So here's a quick breakdown of the percent of traffic coming from social media by campaign type. So here you can see that peer-to-peer campaigns attract the highest percentage of traffic from social media, which makes total sense given the just social nature of peer-to-peer campaigns, and that supporters are sharing their personal fundraising pages and soliciting their networks for gifts. The registration with fundraising event has the next highest percentage, again, likely because this event has that fundraising components where participants are fundraising on behalf of the organization. And we see the impact of social media play out in the actual donations. Peer-to-peer and reg with fundraising campaigns had the highest median totals of any of our campaign types of about 2,000, 2,200 respectively. And so this really emphasizes the power of peer-to-peer and activating your fundraisers to leverage their own networks, especially through social media.
Thanks, Travis. So with that data, here we provide some thought starters to consider how you can evaluate your strategy given these particular findings. So when we consider the information that we just discussed about mobile and social media traffic, How are you allowing your supporters to get involved and take action? Clearly, supporters want to take action and rally their networks around the causes that are most important to them and to evangelize on behalf of them. So it's also worth noting that this data was pulled before the current global events of the last several months. So even further, considering today's landscape, it only underscores how imperative it is to activate your donors to do more, to fundraise and share about your cause on their social networks, especially when they want to again evangelize and share about what really matters to them. Clearly, social media is one of, if not the most critical tool being used right now. So this just indicates the marriage of activating your donors and fundraisers and realizing that they use social media to do that. So especially in a world where you also cannot have a physical event with social distancing regulations and you can't physically reach out to your community, social media is even more important than ever. So it's important to know the tools that are available to you so that you can allow yourself and your fundraisers to take advantage of it. So on this note, given how important it is to empower your fundraisers to raise more and give them a phenomenal experience so that they'll fundraise for you again, we created this guide, Classy and Facebook, a guide to boosting fundraiser retention. This particular resource dives into how you can build a sustainable peer-to-peer program that keeps fundraisers coming back. It breaks down how you can also leverage our new Classy for Facebook integration, where you can use Classy and Facebook together to spread your mission through your supporters' networks, raise more money, and ultimately improve fundraiser retention rates. So this integration enables your fundraisers to boost their reach and raise more money for your cause by duplicating their Classy fundraising pages to Facebook. So, and whether they fundraise through Classy or Facebook, their progress ultimately remains in sync across platforms. And you as the nonprofit get a holistic view of how your fundraising campaigns are performing across the platforms. So as Bradley mentioned at the top, the team is amazingly going to be also sharing some of these resources that we populated throughout the deck to you guys. So excited to get this into your hands as well as an additional resource. So now we're going to move on to section 2, our next section, which is on donor activity. So here for our next key data snapshot, we examined how the amount of time that visitors spend on Classy campaign pages impact their conversion rates. So this includes time spent on landing pages, interacting with any media on the campaign, or going through the checkout process. So first, it's important here to note that on Classy, our donation pages specifically are optimized for speed and conversion. In fact, 60% of people who check out on a donation page do so in less than a minute. However, when we look at and bucket all of the different campaign types together, including those larger campaigns like peer-to-peer, crowdfunding, and events, we see that conversion rates end up peaking in the 4 to 5 minute window. And I'll let Travis speak a little bit more on this.
Yeah, so here in this chart, we have provided both the conversion rate and the volume of visitors that come through, broken up by how long they spend on the different pages. And so here you can see that 70% of visitors take action, either bouncing from the page or converting within the first minute. However, the conversion rates climb significantly as time spent increases, peaking in that 4 to 5 minute window. So as a majority of visitors are taking action within the first minute of a page, it's vital for organizations to provide content that will either immediately hook them and convert them or entice them to keep learning a little bit more to eventually convert. And so you always want your donation pages to be streamlined and optimized for that quick conversion. But crowdfunding, peer-to-peer, event campaign pages, you want to provide a little more content and get the right balance of engaging content to catch the donor's attention and increase their likelihood of checking out. So just make sure that you're always providing that compelling, inspiring content on your campaign pages, just to really connect with all of your supporters and prompt them to take whatever action it is you're looking for them to take. So I'll pass it back to Liz for the thought starter.
Yeah, so that moves us on to our thought starter. Are your campaign pages striking the right balance of content and information to drive conversions? As mentioned, donation pages should be streamlined and optimized for quick conversion, but crowdfunding, peer-to-peer, and event campaign pages must provide that right balance of engaging content to immediately capture donors' attention and increase their likelihood of checking out. So look at the average and median time spent on your campaign pages. Examine the amount of information that you're providing potential donors and make sure that you're not overloading them while still giving them enough to buy into your cause and your mission. And you also want to consider the type of content you're providing as well. A video, for example, might be more engaging and digestible than a ton of text on your campaign pages that your visitors might be hit first with. And this ability to tell your story effectively and efficiently is critical in today's landscape. For both organizations that are on the front lines fundraising for the current global crises, as well as those that are not, but still trying to advance your mission through this time, your fundraising software should empower you to build campaigns that immediately hook donors in, tell your story in an engaging way, and ultimately increase their likelihood of actually completing their gift. So on the note of crowdfunding, I also wanted to shout out our guide, The Anatomy of a Successful Crowdfunding Campaign. And this resource breaks down the elements of an eye-catching, high-converting campaign, complete with nonprofit examples. So this guide will break down how you can really tell your story effectively to draw in those visitors and earn their donations. And this will be coming at you guys after the presentation. So for the last two sections of the report, we are going to focus on recurring giving data. Because of the uncertainty of today's climate and our unforeseen future, investing your time and your focus into a dedicated recurring giving program is a great way to ensure that your nonprofit has a steady stream of donations coming in no matter what happens externally. So when we were going through the data and when we isolated recurring donors, we saw that the campaign type by which they signed up for the recurring gift does tend to be the same campaign type that they return to for an additional interaction. However, one difference among recurring donors is that they do engage with other campaign types at higher rates than non-recurring donors. So for example, of recurring donors who signed up through a donation page and came back to the organization to make an additional one-time gift, 51% of them returned to give through a different campaign type. This is compared to only 18% of non-recurring donors who gave to a donation page and returned to give through a different campaign type. So this just indicates this willingness to engage through different avenues among your recurring donors. And it only points to the opportunity to continue to make additional asks of your recurring donors specifically as well.
Yeah, so to take that one step further, we just wanted to break that down to see where these recurring givers were going when they look to give again. So here in these highlighted boxes, you'll see that recurring donors who come back to make an additional interaction do tend to come back to the same campaign type which they signed up for their recurring gift. But we also want to highlight the spread in the non-highlighted boxes. For donation pages and crowdfunding pages, this is especially unique behavior to just recurring donors. Single gift donors choose to come back almost exclusively to the same campaign type. So if they started with a donation page, they're just going to go back to that donation page. But what we see here is recurring donors are interacting with all different types of campaign types. So for instance, for people that started the recurring gift on a donation page, 16% of them that came back bought a ticket, 14% donated or fundraised with a registration campaign. And so it's just showing that they're looking for other ways to get involved. In the previous year's report, we also found that all one-time donors who returned to start a recurring gift subscription, 25% of them went on to make another one-time gift just as a future interaction. And so it just really highlights and shows off that when a donor raises their hand to start a recurring gift subscription, they're really signaling their willingness to invest in a cause long term. And so this is just really underscored by seeing their willingness to engage with an organization in different ways on top of just their monthly gift.
So given this data, is your organization appealing to its monthly or recurring donors for additional one-off initiatives? Over the years, our data has shown time and time again that recurring donors are willing to engage with your nonprofit on top of their monthly gift. So not only should you be thanking them well and regularly, but you can also take the opportunity strategically to invite them deeper into your work with other one-time asks or even other creative ways like first access to event tickets. Maybe you can offer them a special discount, or you can even involve them in your campaign soft launches, saying, hey, you're in our circle of most important and impactful supporters. Your support has been critical to our success. Will you help us reach our campaign goal? And maybe you invite them to donate first to get your campaign up and running before you actually do your hard launch to your wider community base. There are just so many different ways that you can ideate ways for you to engage them further and also help them feel special as you do it, as you continue to just hype up their value to your organization and continue to encourage them to keep going and running with you long term. So in fact, to help you capitalize on the willingness of your recurring donors to take repeated action for your cause, we created 8 free email templates to help you upgrade your recurring donors. So you can download this guide and use these copy, tweak, and paste templates to ask your monthly donors to maybe upgrade their monthly gift amount, make an additional one-time gift, or both. So please do definitely take advantage of this resource and help it inform your ongoing annual strategy of touch points with your recurring donors. So now moving on to our last section, donor retention. One of our key insights here was that of some of our largest organizations on the platform, specifically those who make over $50 million in total revenue, 26% of that revenue comes from recurring gifts.
Yeah, so it's a relatively simple stat. It may seem a little straightforward, but we really just wanted to verify. So when we look at the success of an organization's recurring giving efforts, we observe that there's a strong correlation between the percent of revenue that's coming in from recurring donors and the overall revenue of the organization. Again, in a previous State of Modern Philanthropy, we found that at the individual level, recurring donors are more than 5 times as valuable as one-time givers. And so we really highlight both of these to just drive home the importance and the power of recurring giving.
Yeah, so following up on what Travis just shared, that brings us to our last thought starter, which is, what are you doing to grow your recurring giving program? Nonprofits that are focused on growing their recurring giving programs will be able to truly scale because it's such an efficient revenue stream. And as you fundraise today, make sure to prioritize growing your recurring giving program with the future in mind. So for both organizations that are and are not on the front lines of today's global crises, make sure you're thinking about turning your donors into recurring donors to support your work, not just now, but into the future as well. So for your existing recurring donors, maybe consider a targeted strategy to engage them and ask them to make an additional gift in light of current events, increase their monthly donation, or both. So again, to help you maximize on your recurring giving program, we've also got our quick start guide to recurring giving, which is full of best practices to start acquiring, retaining, and growing your base of monthly donors. So you'll be getting that after this presentation as well. And that brings us to the end of our sneak peek of our State of Modern Philanthropy 2020. We are really excited for all of you to really see it in its fullness. As promised, all registrants would get a copy of the State of Modern Philanthropy if you'd like, so please look out for a copy of that in your inbox. The full report has many, many more insights that we weren't able to share today, including conversion rates and median amounts raised for different campaign types, the times throughout the day and throughout the year that donors are most active on campaign pages, deeper insights into the behavior of Giving Tuesday and year-end donors, and much more. And as part of the report, as we do every year, you'll also get a benchmarks worksheet inside the report that breaks down some key stats across the industry, and you can see how you stack up with your own results. And so now we definitely wanted to open it up for any questions that any of you might have had for us.
All right, so as Elizabeth and Travis mentioned, if you have questions, go ahead and just drop them in now. I thought this was really helpful and really interesting to see how things are trending, and some areas like you mentioned throughout, just how to have some things to start some thoughts about. Have you one of the questions that came in, have you seen any changes in the percentage of donors coming from social media over the last 6 months?
So thanks for that question. Actually, we haven't. So this report covers the data time range that Travis broke down at the top of our presentation. Let me grab it really quickly, which is from October 2018 to September 2019. So we unfortunately haven't been able to go back in and really dig into what the last 6 months have shown us, but we feel like the trend that only was how it was trending when we pulled this data and what it shows of the importance of social media could only be greatly increased within the last 6 months. So there's that, and we're also actually really excited to dig back in as we start thinking ahead for our next report as well.
One note on that I would say is, we've seen social media kind of increasing over the last few years in general. And so the last 6 months definitely has been really interesting from a data point of view. I think the even more so, the bigger trend that we've seen recently has been the shift in just the different campaign types. Just knowing that, as it warms up, people like to get outside and have different kind of in-person events, which we can't really do as much right now. And so it's been really interesting to see orgs pivot on that to digital, whether it's a virtual event or just a completely different campaign altogether. And really seeing their supporters rally behind the orgs, and really kind of stepping up to help the organizations. And so we have seen a lot more people be active on social media, but a lot of it is not just people on social media, but how the orgs are responding to it as well.
Okay, great. And I'll add to that real quick. Kindful, we have some online donation tools as well, and we have seen across our customer base almost a 200% increase in online giving. And so I can't necessarily say whether or not the source of that online giving is through social media, but have definitely seen a big upswing since kind of we move everything back to the March 15th date is when we kind of say COVID began in our data sets, and we've seen a big uptick generally in online giving since that time frame. On average, across our total customer base, an increase of 200,000. I'm sorry, 200% over what we were seeing before March 15th. So definitely some really interesting trends there, and more giving is moving online. Let's see, there's a couple other questions coming in. Some of these are really specific. Let's see. I know there was one, there was a couple here that were about there's one around recurring donations that was a little bit more about what are the giving levels that are typically used for recurring donations. So can you give some thoughts on, like, as you're setting up kind of a recurring campaign, how you think about how to position the levels of monthly giving?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to recurring giving, it's definitely something you want to consider the amounts that you're providing as maybe like default suggestions for the giving amounts. We do see that recurring donations tend to be roughly 40 to 50% in size as a one-time gift. But the benefit coming is in that it's a monthly recurring subscription. And so we see on average, a recurring gift lasts for more than a year. And so even though the monthly size is a little bit smaller, the value definitely comes in the long term. And so when you're looking at setting up a recurring focused campaign, definitely consider lowering the levels that you offer by default compared to a one-time gift focused campaign. But it's definitely something you should experiment with yourself. Different areas and different causes just have different average donation amounts, and so finding your sweet spot is really important. So I would suggest experimenting, test some low ones, test some high ones, and just see where things net out at.
Yeah, I love that. And just to add on to what Travis was saying, I think one viable experiment that you might try is to maybe set your lowest default amount as your median gift size as it is now, just to see how it impacts your results. I think that might be just a good starting point. You know, even people who choose to give less than your lowest default amount may still use your suggested amount as a reference point for their gift, and actually maybe give something closer to that amount that they otherwise might have. So if your lowest default amount was like, you know, $15, you know, in their minds, they might, without that having been there, they might have chosen to give like $5, but maybe seeing that $15 amount as your lowest amount, maybe they'll be like, oh, okay, fine, maybe I'll give like $10, a little closer to that. So I think definitely some experimentation would be great to find what works with your specific community and your donor base. But definitely, I think a starting point might be to set your lowest default amount just as your median gift size as it is now, and see how that impacts your results. And another just general tip, or again test, I would say, that is worth trying with your recommended default amounts is maybe list it from highest to lowest, so that people are seeing, just as we read left to right, like that might impact the default amounts that they're seeing and considering first.
That's great. Elizabeth, I had cut you off. Did you have something to add, or I have another question or two?
Oh, thanks so much for following up on that. No, I was just thinking about the first question that was asked about social media trends. And I also just wanted to maybe again underscore, like, as we're seeing in the data, that peer-to-peer naturally is a high performer when it comes to attracting campaign visitors from social media. So especially as social media just increases in its importance and usage in today's world, is to maybe see how like your next peer-to-peer event would, or consider peer-to-peer as like one of your next event types to try out if it wasn't already, or maybe like a virtual fundraising event with that fundraising element, like with our registration with fundraising campaign type, and to see how that could attract people from where they're already living today, which is on social media. So thanks for following up with me on that.
Yeah, that's great. And going into that a little bit, there was one other question around virtual events, and it was, what guidance do you have for organizations that are new to this strategy of everything being virtual? We've had a year-end gala, which was the primary source of discretionary funding for the organization. And so if you're an organization, I think this is one of the things I found most interesting about the current COVID situation, is that, you know, we know from our data and some surveys we did, that still about 80% of organizations raise their most successful way of fundraising is offline. It's not through online donations, not through peer-to-peer. And so many people are having to make these massive shifts. And so I'm interested in how you guys, what you would say to Vanessa here, who asked this question about if you're needing to move everything virtual and that event is going away, what recommendations do you guys have for them? And I know you guys have done this a lot for a lot of organizations, seen a lot of success.
Yeah, I love that question. Thanks, Vanessa. Yes, we actually have resources on the Classy blog. I highly recommend everyone to go check out our blog, because we've been putting out resources exactly on that topic, which is about pivoting to virtual fundraising and virtual events. One of our blog posts that comes to mind, I believe it's titled like "From In-Person to Virtual, like maximizing your event revenue." We actually kind of dive. I immediately thought of Upaya, which is one of our customers, because they actually really successfully pivoted in short time notice, pivoted their gala to a virtual event, and they were able to really leverage the campaign page to put their story front and center. And so they even like pre-recorded some videos that they were like, people from their staff like got dressed up in, and they uploaded these videos to help infuse some of that human element and put those on their campaign page. Again, you can also actually live stream from Classy as well, so that's an option as well. I think one of my favorite tips, or one of my favorite strategies that they used particularly for that gala, was so for their in-person gala, they actually had table captains that were going to be responsible for, you know, bringing people to the event and eventually just like raising money within their table, right? So in their pivot to online, Upaya actually turned their table captains into peer-to-peer fundraising captains. So now it was totally online. Those captains were now not only just limited to whoever was going to be at their table, but now they can solicit their entire networks on Facebook, over email, like all their friends and family, to come and actually raise money for the event. So they turned their table captains into general peer-to-peer captains, and those limitations of being at the event in person were now totally broken off. So that was actually a really successful peer-to-peer strategy that they used for that event. And I imagine that you can still implement that strategy in any type of event that you put on as well. For events like in-person events such as like races or walks or endurance events, another example that I like to call out is Hope for Haiti, and also another classy customer, and they every year host their Hike for Haiti, wherein participants walk, I believe, like 200 miles or 200 steps to honor the daily journey that people in a different country actually take to get to water, education, and everything. So that they essentially turned that into a virtual experience where now anyone can walk 200 steps up their apartment building, like around the block, socially distanced. And they really encouraged people to go on social to leverage their event hashtag so that people can see other people who are participating in the event. And another just general tip that I would have for those is that if you can swing it, like maybe think of other ways to delight participants. Maybe you can send them some swag if feasible, or something like a race bib or anything like that to make it feel like they're really participating. And I would say that virtual fundraising has always been around with online fundraising, where, for example, if you in a non-COVID world, like even if you did have a race, you could still have a virtual component where anyone who is not in the city or local could still sign up, register, or fundraise and participate in their own hometown and do a walk or like run around their neighborhood and still be a part of the event. And that just really breaks off any geographic limitations that you might have to your event. And now it's just everyone has to do that, right? So I would really lean into those ideas, and also please check out our blog. We have a ton more there as well as some other nonprofit examples of people who've successfully turned their events to virtual. So I know I just like talked a whole spiel, but hopefully that was helpful in some way.
No, that's great. Well, I think that was the majority of the questions, and so I just wanted to really tell you guys thank you for being willing to share a little bit of this information before the guide is released. And when is the full guide available? Or
the State
full
of
study
Modern
available?
Philanthropy is fully out, so it is out and available.
Oh, it is out now. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I thought that it was. So I apologize.
No worries.
About.
I know we were talking about it before it was actually launched, so yeah.
So sorry about my misinformation there. But no, well, we really appreciate you taking the time just to go through some of the data points, the most interesting things that you guys have found. Do you guys have any closing remarks before we leave, or any thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, just thank you again, Bradley and the Kindful team, for having us today. It was really great to be able to share some of these insights. And I also really appreciate the question about virtual fundraising too, because our hope is that with all the resources that we're putting out, that we have put out, that we're putting out now, and that we will put out, are really meant to help nonprofits really inform and enhance their fundraising strategies in any capacity and in any landscape. So that's really our hope, and we really hope that you're able to kind of dig in and see what the trends have been and what they'll continue to be.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll point out that on Kindful's blog, we've had 2 different webinars where we've had panel discussions on these topics, and someone from Classy has joined us both times, where we've talked about events and how to make the most of them, or just how to do better fundraising when we can't gather. So there's some things there on the Kindful blog if you're interested in seeing a little bit more information as well. So again, we'll be following up with the all the resources that Elizabeth and Travis shared today, and a recording of the webinar in case you want to share it with anyone else, or if you would like to rewatch it and go back through any of the information. So again, thanks to Travis and Elizabeth and the Classy team for doing this with us. We really appreciate the insights.
Thank you, Bradley. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.